Charles Taylor was born in 1948 to a father who served both as a Baptist school teacher and circuit judge, and a mother who was a servant. After graduating from secondary school, he traveled to the United States and was there for 9 years. In that time, he earned a degree in economics from Bentley College and a postgraduate degree from New Hampshire College. After obtaining his qualifications, Taylor returned to Liberia and was offered a job as director of the government's procurement agency under President Doe. His appointment was, however, short-lived, as he was accused of embezzling over $900,000. To avoid arrest, he fled to America, but was arrested after President Doe issued an arrest warrant. For several months, he remained in prison in the US, fiercely fighting against Doe's extradition request. In 1985, he escaped from the maximum security US prison by bribing guards and made his way first to West Africa and then to Libya to train himself and dissidents in the art of guerrilla warfare. This training will pave the way to earn Charles Taylor the moniker West Africa's most notorious warlord. Taylor would later claim in his trial at The Hague that it was US CIA agents that orchestrated his escape. After completing his militia training in Libya, he resurfaced in neighboring Ivory Coast and founded the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, the NPFL. In 1989, Taylor was ready for war. Taylor's first target was Nimba County, a county in northeastern Liberia that shares borders with the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire in the east and the Republic of Guinea in the northwest. Sensing this, Doe immediately sent his forces there to crush the rebels. But rather than concentrating solely on the rebels, Doe's forces unleashed a vicious campaign against the local Nimba population, killing, maiming, and destroying properties. To Doe's dismay, his forces' flagrant suppression assaults on the local population gave Taylor and his newly formed militia what he wanted: new recruits, people who now wanted revenge for Doe's offensive. By mid-1990, Taylor's forces had moved further into Liberia, reaching the port of Buchanan, which was only 80 miles southeast of Monrovia. Not too long after, his forces captured Robertsfield Airport, a base they would use to smuggle arms into the country. Soon thereafter, Monrovia, the nation's capital, was under siege. Whilst Taylor's forces ambushed the capital from the east, another rebel group, led by a former army officer named Prince Johnson, was attacking from the west. Sensing that they were under siege, many of Doe's soldiers started fleeing. In the midst of the anarchy, Doe remained in the executive mansion, the presidential home of Liberia's leader. He resisted countless pleas to go into exile. As a result of the devastation taking place in Liberia, a number of countries in West Africa immediately pulled their resources and assembled ECOMOC, a peacekeeping force whose mandate it was to quell the insurgency. On a fateful September day in 1990, General Doe left the comfort and safety of the executive mansion in a bid to pay a visit to the ECOMOC soldiers based in their headquarters. 70 soldiers had escorted Doe to the headquarters, but they weren't robust nor large enough to ward off Prince Johnson's forces. Having been tipped off as to Doe's whereabouts, Johnson's forces immediately launched an assault and a raid at the ECOMOC headquarters Doe was visiting. Johnson's rebel group and Doe's forces engaged in a voracious standoff. After a prolonged battle, Doe's forces were defeated and Doe, now wounded in both legs, was captured and taken away by Johnson. Back at his headquarters with Doe, Johnson ordered the interrogation of Doe to be filmed. The film shows Doe's ear being cut off, and in an act of cannibalism that the rebel group had become known for, Johnson is then seen chewing Doe's ear. The film shows the other ear also being sliced off. The next day, Doe's dismembered body was placed in a wheelbarrow and paraded through the streets of Monrovia. With Doe's overthrow, an interim government led by a man named Amos Sawyer was announced. Sensing that his plans of securing the presidency for himself were proven futile, Charles Taylor refused to partake in the new interim government. Instead, he established another regime outside Monrovia, essentially creating a state within a state. Taylor was willing to go to any lengths to ensure that he secured Liberia for himself, by any means necessary. Within the territory in which he had set up his regime, Taylor established a business conglomerate. He traded in gold, diamonds, iron ore, and timber. It is said that a British firm paid Taylor £10 million a month for permission to ship out iron ore from a port situated in the territory Taylor controlled. Taylor still continued to launch attacks in a bid to gain control of Monrovia. However, the Esquimalt soldiers were on his back. They captured Taylor's territory, rendering his campaign fruitless. Previously averse to participating in peace talks, Taylor was now beyond keen to. A peace deal was finally struck in Nigeria in 1995. This deal became known as the Abuja Agreement. Within the terms of the agreement, an interim government was to run Liberia for a stated period before general elections were to be conducted. By the time this deal was struck, over 150,000 lives had been lost in the war. Despite the peace deal, Taylor's desperation to have control over the diamond trade never stopped. In 1996, Taylor's forces engaged in a fight against Khan soldiers. Their aim was to gain control of the diamond trade. Desperate to put an end to the crisis unfolding in Liberia, regional leaders once again gathered in Abuja with Taylor and other warlords. This time, they wanted to sign a new peace accord. To ensure compliance, the regional leaders put their feet down, demanding that the warlords fully comply with the accord or face penalties. Following the peace agreement, Charles Taylor was elected president of Liberia in July 1997. Taylor's party, the National Patriotic Party, the NPP, secured over 75% of the votes, 49 out of 64 seats in the National Assembly, and 21 out of 26 seats in the Senate. But whilst Taylor had long last realized his ambition of ruling Liberia, and by extension have full control over its resources, he harbored and acted on his desire to wreak havoc on and control the resources of his neighboring country, Sierra Leone. Acting in collaboration with Foday Sankoh, Taylor would later be accused of financing and providing military support and arms towards the brutal civil war in Sierra Leone, which lasted over a decade. Taylor's sole aim was to gain access to Sierra Leone's diamonds. Within 2 years of his presidency, another civil war broke out in Liberia. A new rebel group consisting of various anti-Taylor factions emerged. Calling itself Liberians United for Reconciliation and Democracy, they slowly gained a foothold in northwest Liberia. Sensing defeat, Taylor went into exile in 2003. With his wife Jewel by his side, Taylor boarded a plane and departed for a life in exile to Nigeria, or so he thought. After numerous wranglings, Taylor was eventually apprehended and taken back to Liberia. Upon arriving at Roberts International Airport, Taylor was arrested, handed over to UN soldiers who escorted him to Sierra Leone to be delivered to the Special Court for Sierra Leone, a court established to try persons accused of being involved in Sierra Leone's civil war. A decision was made to try Taylor at the ICC in The Hague. On the 26th of April 2012, Taylor was convicted of 11 counts of aiding and abetting war crimes and crimes against humanity. This verdict made him the first former head of state to be convicted by an international tribunal since the Nuremberg trials. Taylor appealed against this verdict, but was unsuccessful. He was sentenced to 50 years imprisonment and is currently serving his term at a prison situated in England. Charles Taylor still maintains his innocence.